Hi, I'm Diane Allen, and welcome to This Is Me. As you know, we're in the Thanksgiving season, and on today's show, we will be talking about thankfulness and gratefulness and how we can express thankfulness and gratefulness to God in difficult times. Joining me is Reverend Wanda Craner, former minister of spiritual nurture at the Pennsylvania Southeast Conference of the United Church of Christ. She is currently serving with the Gestalt Pastoral Care Association. Hi, Wanda, and thanks so much for coming on today's show and being a part of This Is Me. I want to welcome you. And, you know, we have been friends for quite a long while. And in the past, we have done ministry together, far as with the church and worship. And it's so nice to see you and, you know, just reconnect. And that's one of the great things I like about doing this show, that I do have that opportunity and that chance to come and talk and reconnect with people such as you.
Well, it's just a pleasure. It really is to see you and Bruce again. So, thanks for the opportunity.
I know you were the former minister, spiritual nurturer at the Pennsylvania Southeast Conference of the United Church of Christ. And you are now at the Gestalt Pastoral Care Ministry. And I just want you to maybe explain to me and to my viewers maybe what a spiritual nurturer is, and, you know, maybe a little bit about what you're currently doing. And maybe just tell us a little bit about who Wanda Craner is.
Okay. Well, when I was working at the conference, I did that for 19 years. And the focus of my role was to help pastors and lay people and churches deepen their prayer lives, to develop spiritual formation kinds of ministries and programs within the church. Also, I would work with the spiritual life mission team of the conference, and we would sponsor retreats, various retreats for adults and young people and so forth, and just a way of helping people really get in touch with God's presence in their lives. And so there were a variety of ways to do that. Sometimes I would meet with clergy in small groups, sometimes one-to-one, and just trying to open possibilities for people to explore their own spiritual life. So that was pretty much what I was doing in the conference for those years. In my current ministry, it is an ecumenical ministry, and it is focused on healing and spiritual companioning and prayer. And I've been actually a part of that ever since the beginning of my ministry, even when I was in the conference. So I had one foot in that world and one foot in the Gestalt Pastoral Care world. And so it's always been a part of my ministry in that. What I'm doing now, I meet a lot with people individually and small groups, and I also teach Gestalt Pastoral Care and have classes, and some of those classes are online and some of those classes are in person. COVID, of course, has made it more online right now. But in terms of that ministry, I see a lot of people one-to-one that are working on their own inner healing processes because I see healing ministry in terms of Gestalt Pastoral Care as working with people's body, mind, spirit, and their relationships. So any part of that could be a part of somebody coming to see me and trying to get a sense of healing in any of those areas, or combined, integrated areas.
So anyone, if they get in touch with the Gestalt Pastoral Care, could call you or other counselors?
Or my other colleagues, yes. We have a website, and it's gestaltpastoralcare.org, and if you go on that website, it will tell you what we are about in much more detail than what I've just done, and also have a list of all of the Gestalt Pastoral Care ministers that are available and for those kinds of things, individual as well as groups, and also teaching and training kinds of things.
Now, I know Wanda Craner.
Yes.
And like I said, we have worshiped and worked together for many years.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit, for my viewers and for my listeners, a little bit about who you are.
Well, I'm an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ, and also a spiritual director. I took coursework in that beyond my seminary training. I am married, and I have 2 girls. Both of them are in college at this point.
Wow.
And they are the joy of Steve, my husband, and our lives, Tisha and Michaela. And so let's see, what else can I tell you? I love nature. I'm a bird watcher, so that's one of my pastimes, so to speak. And oh my goodness, I love life most of the time.
Okay, well, I want to get on to our topics of the day, which is thankfulness and gratefulness.
Yeah.
Now, we know that these 2 words are similar, and many times they are used interchangeably. So I wanted to, today talk about maybe if you can just define, maybe in your own words, what thankfulness is and what gratefulness is, and the difference between the 2.
Well, when you first asked that question, it really got me to thinking about those words. And I think for me, thankfulness is an appreciation for something, and gratefulness has an action with it. When we're grateful, we somehow share that. It's a sharing of our thankfulness, is what I would say. That's kind of how I would differentiate them, maybe. But they are so tied together that it's hard to pull them apart. But I can show you how grateful I am.
Yes.
And do certain particular things, and I'll talk about maybe some of those in a little bit. But and thankfulness, I think, also is an attitude of life. We can approach life in many, many different ways.
Right.
But if we approach it as a gift from God, to which we can be thankful for, I think it kind of shifts how we live in the world today, no matter how good or how bad the world might get.
Right, that's true. So now, you were saying about thankfulness and gratefulness, far as gratefulness is more the action part, and an appreciation, and thankfulness is more thought in the mind and the intent. So one is more so inward, and the other one is more outward.
Yeah, I think so, and I guess for me, I wouldn't separate them as much as integrate them. And so one can be thankful, and they may not necessarily do anything about it.
Yeah.
To show my gratefulness in a variety of ways. I think that's where, for me, it's like the next step of thankfulness, being thankful. Does that make sense, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it does. Because you were saying gratefulness is more of an action.
Yes. Yeah.
So so
I think
you have to make that step of showing gratitude. If you are grateful.
Yes. Yeah.
So now I know people may say, "Oh, well, maybe why should I be thankful?" For example, when it's sort of like when you say good morning to a person and they say what you know, where's the good in it,
What,
you know?
what I have,
What I
yeah,
have
what's
to be
good,
good for,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So why do we need to be thankful, or why do we need to be grateful? You know, is there a purpose or no purpose for being thankful or grateful?
Well, I think especially now in these days, where we have the pandemic we're dealing with. In the United States, of course, we've just gone through a really difficult cycle in the election. There are a lot of people that don't have their jobs and are suffering in a variety of ways. And I can hear why they would say that. What do I have to be thankful for? My life's really, a hard,
Right.
it's a difficult place. What I would say in this is that they need to reach out and have somebody to be standing with them or sitting with them, being with them, to kind of work through some of that. I think we all need that.
Right.
Somehow, some way, we need at least one or groups of people that we can sit down and really share those things. Because when we do, we're not pretending that
Yeah.
everything's okay.
Right.
That's not thankfulness, when we pretend. How do I think it may be helpful? If I have an attitude of thankfulness, it's pointing me to look at what's the big picture here.
Yeah.
Where might there be sparks of new life or possibility? It's sort of like when you live in the darkness or whatever, it gets you thinking about an appreciation for light.
For light.
And it's not, I don't believe it's God putting these things upon us. I do believe as we are engaged in these things, we always have the opportunity to look for a positive, to look for what may be there that I'm not seeing, One of the things for me during this pandemic and being cloistered in our homes and so forth, and missing simple touch of people, hugs,
Yes.
And that kind of thing, is I've noticed when I get up in the morning, I'm paying attention more to for things like birds singing outside my window as I'm having my cup of coffee. Most of the time, I would have been just having my cup of coffee and maybe reading or praying or whatever, but I wasn't as conscious of those beautiful bird sounds and songs.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of the thankfulness, we become more conscious of things around us, or we can be.
Right.
Not always, but we can be, and we notice things. It's noticing more things than just the drudgery or the hurt or whatever.
Right. And I know one thing that came to my mind as you were saying is the touch part.
Yeah.
I'm a touchy-feely person.
Yeah. Me too.
And this pandemic and quarantine has definitely put straps on you.
Yep.
And you can't touch, you can't, and so that is something that, I struggle with at times because I want to, hug somebody and I can't, and then being away from loved ones.
Yes.
And you can't see them or touch them,
Yeah.
you can talk to them, but it's not the same. So when I get a chance to have my grandkids over, and at one time I was in the supermarket, and this was when the pandemic was really bad, and I'm like, I'm closer to other people's children than my own grandchildren,
Yes.
because, they were over there, but I'm in the supermarket, and little kids are running around me, but I was like, wow, I'm closer to them than my own grandchildren. So, when I do have a chance to have them over, I'm like, oh, yes, And it does give you a great appreciation and thankfulness, that, you may have taken for granted.
Yes.
And that now you say, oh yeah, for those small things that you took for granted, you can't take for granted anymore.
Right,
And
exactly.
you are grateful when you do get those moments. So,
Yes.
it definitely has helped me in that way, as you were saying. Taking those small moments and saying, "Oh wow, I'm thankful." You know, I'm blessed in so many other ways that sometimes you didn't think you were blessed in. You
Exactly.
know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
is definitely a time for thankfulness and gratefulness in these times where you feel that everything is going upside down, you
Exactly.
know, and inside out. You know,
It's sort of like, I mean, it sounds very counter in some ways, but the pandemic, as horrible as it has been and as grueling as it has been for all of us, it also has given an opportunity for us to kind of step back and slow down too.
oh yeah,
And it's sort of like, it may be an invitation that I'm not saying that God created the pandemic,
of course,
but God can work through that by inviting us to look at something else, too. So looking at this time as, okay, I'm not rushing around as much as I would have. I will sit, and it gives more space for that, to really reflect
yeah.
on our lives a little bit.
Now, there are probably many people, and especially this time of year, as we were talking, who are thinking about how can we express thankfulness and gratefulness to God in this difficult times, and especially when we're missing someone at our table this Thanksgiving, you
Yes.
know, and also how can we express thankfulness and gratefulness, you know, if we're experiencing financial difficulties, if we're experiencing emotional difficulties, you know, if people are facing maybe a business that has gone under, you know, I've been laid off, you know, suicide is up because of the pandemic. How can we still express thankfulness and gratefulness in our most difficult times, such as that?
Yes, and again, I would say that prior to that, it's important for us to reach out and connect with other people and allow ourselves to really express the pain that we're in, whether it be lost job or lost loved one or whatever. And there's so many people that have lost in many different ways. And by doing that, if we might want to look at it as a way of inviting others to kind of share our burden. And I know sometimes that feels embarrassing. I know people, oh, I don't want to share, my problems or whatever. But if we reach out to the right people that can be with us, and we know who that is in our lives. We know that so and so is able to sit with us, and other person may not be. But to be able to first share our pains and sufferings, and God invites us to do that too.
Amen.
To share our pain and suffering with God, and not make it flowery or anything, but just prematurely anyway.
Yeah.
But to say, God, I am hurting here. And by doing that, we're inviting God right there to meet us exactly where we're at. And I think it's in that process then that we start learning the gifts and the graces, and then we can get to a point of being thankful and maybe seeing blessings. A few years ago, within a span of actually 3 years, my younger brother, my mother, and my sister all died in that short span of time. And I was grieving, really grieving. And so at that point, I wasn't feeling
Yeah.
thankful.
Right.
Okay. However, my faith and my faith community that I grew in were really providing support during that time. They were praying for me and my family in that time. I got to a point, and I'll talk specifically about my younger sister, where I had a real internal sense that she was at peace in a way that she hadn't been at peace because of her physical, condition and everything, which was really torturous, really, in many ways. Now, at the very beginning of that, I wasn't there, emotionally. I wasn't there. I needed to go through the grief. I needed to, tell God, I'm angry. Why did this happen to my young sister that I love dearly, that kind of thing. But as I prayed with it, as I had other people supporting me and walking with me in that, there's the key, walking with me in it, I got to this place where I had a real sense that my sister was at a place with God in the resurrection, that she was better than she had ever been in her life here.
Yeah.
And I knew she was okay. In here I knew, not just up here.
Right. Okay.
I really knew that. And so I'm so thankful that we have a God that reaches out to us in those ways and walks with us, even and we can tell God anything, and God will be there and connect with us.
Now, the scripture says, in everything, give thanks.
Yeah.
This is the will of God concerning us. And sometimes when we look at that scripture, do we thank God for the hurt? Do we thank Him for the pain? Or do we thank Him, that my loved one is gone? Or is that telling us, even though we may be in that pain, in that situation, that we don't thank Him for it, but we do continue to give Him thanks?
That's where I would go with it, the second that you just said, the latter. Because it doesn't say, it says, in everything give thanks. It doesn't say, give thanks for everything. Yeah. So, I personally wouldn't be one that would say, oh God, thank you that I lost my job, and I can't provide for my family, However, God, there must be something beyond this for me and for my family. And that's a faith statement, obviously, it's a trust, but I can give thanks that I can go to a God, and that God's going to listen to me. And I think that's true for all of us. I believe that with all my heart. We can go and we can keep knocking on God's door.
Yeah.
God tells us to do that, persevere, in our prayers. And there's hope beyond the loss, whether it's physical loss or job loss or whatever.
Yes.
So I think that's how I would answer that for you.
Yes. I do want to ask you too now, is being thankful and being grateful, how does that play in our well-being? Do you think people who are grateful and thankful are a little bit more rounded, or, how does that play in our emotional and mental well-being of being thankful and grateful?
Yeah, I think it does in many ways. I think of people like Bishop Tutu of South Africa.
Yes.
I think of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk. I think of when Mother Teresa was living in Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Some of these people that we've seen, either in our world or on TV or whatever, when you look at them, they have a sense of well-being that that's different. Even Bishop Tutu, I had the pleasure of being in a conference with him at one point, and I'll never forget, as he was processing in during a worship service, as he was moving, it was almost like he was dancing forward. And here's a person that has lived in a place of unspeakable torture and unspeakable kinds of injustices. And what spoke to me was, here he is light and and grateful. You could see thankfulness all
Yeah.
around him, and there was a settledness in him. And so, yes, I would say if we keep our eyes on God, it is a way to help us to be thankful, not for all the bad stuff,
Right.
but we see beyond the bad stuff. It's a way that we get glimmers of new hope and new possibility and love, genuine love from God and others.
Right.
So yeah, I think they're in a, what I would say, if somebody is living with thankfulness and being grateful for things, they are living sacramentally, is what I would say. Their lives are sacraments, how they actually live.
So would you say it brings about a certain amount of contentment?
Yes.
You learn, as Paul say, whatever state I find myself to be in, to be content.
Yes.
So living thankful and grateful will bring a certain amount of contentment, because what you can't control anymore, you learn to live with.
Yes.
In a matter of, you say, that God will be able there. He's there. He's going to bring you through. We see beyond the problem and the circumstances, and He won't let anything that come upon you that He will not deliver us or, bring us out of. So it could be an amount of contentment.
Yes.
Of
Yes.
being thankful. In the circumstances.
Right. And it's not that we strive for that as much as it's a trust. Are we trusting in our God?
Right.
That God is faithful and just.
Yes. Yes, He is. Like, we're living in a post-Christian age, and how relevant do you believe being thankful and grateful to God is today?
My sense is a lot of people are not conscious of that. They're more conscious of what they see on television and what they experience. We are so bombarded
Yes,
with the media, and it's always the sensational of one brand or another. And one doesn't hear so much about the spiritual things that are always there and available to us. And so I think as we live out our faith and live out our lives in a sacramental way, there's the invitation for us to be showing people, hey, this is part of God's blessing. It's the old saying that I think is attributed to St. Francis, preach the gospel and do it without words. Okay, so in other words, let your life speak. Let your light shine, so that people will see that, and then they'll say, gee, why does Diane have such a it's almost like an attraction to the person, like and that's what happened to me with Bishop Desmond Tutu. I was attracted to him because of his joy, because of his thanksgiving in his life, and knowing that it wasn't that he had a pie in the sky kind of way of living. He had a hard life, and yet he's still thankful.
Amen.
How about that,
Well, the Bible says to let our light shine.
Yes.
And, many times when we were, when I or my husband would speak on that scripture, we would say a light doesn't talk, it just stays there.
Excellent.
It just does what it's supposed to do because it's a light.
Yes.
And I think as Christians, that's what we are supposed to do too. We don't have to hold a big Bible up or, say a lot of words, but our life should just shine because we're supposed to be that living example, and people should see that light in us.
Yes.
And attribute and attribute it to the Lord. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, I also wanted to know how you think that thankfulness and gratefulness, is it something that we're born with, innate with, or is that something that, you know, has been nourished in us because our parents have told us, you know, be thankful, say thank you to somebody who give you things, send a thank you note, you know. So is thankfulness and gratefulness, is it something that's nurtured or is it innate?
I would say that there has to be, in some way, a spark of that in us when we're born. Now, it may not be developed, but we're created, if we believe we're created in the image of God, then there's got to be a thankful way of living, a grateful way of living that you know is born in us. But if it's not nurtured, if it's not cared for,
Yes.
then it may not grow up.
It may not develop.
Yeah, it just may not happen. Right. So I think it needs to be, it's both and, but it needs to be nurtured in order for it to really be full circle.
Wanda, thank you again for coming out and sharing with me on the topic of thankfulness and gratefulness. You know, as we get ready to celebrate Thanksgiving, we want to keep all these things in mind. And, you know, you've been a wonderful guest, and I want to thank you for sharing with my viewers and with my listeners this very, you know, very important topic of being thankful and grateful.
Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity, really. It's been great to reconnect after a long time of not being able to. And I have to say this, okay? Diane sang at my installation, and she sang, "Jesus is here right now." And in this conversation, I've experienced Jesus being here right now. So thank you very much. I would hug you if it were not COVID days, but we will hug.
Yes,
we will hug. Thanks, Diane, really, for the opportunity.
Thank you again, Wanda. And thank my guests, and thank my viewers and my listeners. But until next time, I'm Diane Allen, and this is me.
That's wonderful.
If you like today's show, please hit the like button and share it. Also, hit the notification bell for alerts for upcoming segments. And please subscribe to my channel. And feel free to leave a comment about today's show, along with any suggestion and ideas for upcoming shows. This Is Me is on all social platforms. We are also available on most podcast platforms, such as Google, Anchor, Spotify, Overcast, Breaker, and Radio Public. I want to thank you, my viewers and listeners, for tuning in.